What is going on? And thank you for tuning in to the Elite Division Collective podcast. It is a podcast that will discuss fitness, nutrition, mindset, and many more topics. My name is Sean Spence, and I will be your host for the entire episode. So hopefully you find some value from today. And without further ado, let's go. How the heck are you? Welcome back to the second official episode of the Elite Division Collective podcast. So clearly, if you are coming back or if you're back, you enjoyed the episode one, unless this is the first time you're here. And again, you're just kind of questioning why you're here. I'm questioning why I'm here too. No, just kidding. At the end of the day, today we are going to talk about our time and our goals, as you can see on the title. So I left that up to, I left it being a little bit mysterious because I wanted people to kind of think about, oh, what the heck is he talking about? My time and my goals, or our goals and our time. What the heck does that mean? So similar to before, I'm just going to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to be talking about time and how we have so much and yet so little. Being aware of our time and where it's going and ensuring we're spending it in a way that we want or in a way that we should. And talking about how time relates to our goals and priorities, why it's so important and why you need to be intentional about how you choose to spend your time, because at the end of the day, we really only have so much. So, speaking of time, what kind of time am I talking about? Am I talking about the time on a clock? Am I talking about the time it takes for you to hit stop on this podcast and wash your ears out after having to hear only a few minutes of me? No, we're talking about lifetime. So obviously it is a subjective term, but lifetime being the time that we spend in our lives. Obviously, yes, it does relate to the time on a clock, but more specifically, I'm talking about the time that we spend living. So why is it important? And why should we care about the time that we have to spend? Well, because it's only linear. And what I mean by that is it only goes one way. It gets spent. It doesn't go up, doesn't go down. It goes from start to finish, and that's it. And there's a limited amount no matter what you do about it. At the end of the day, it's going to run down to zero. And that's pretty scary. I totally get that. I understand that. And either you use it or you lose it. There was an example of a bank account or something to do with money or just numbers where I was reading it over, and it gave you an idea of if you had a certain amount of money in your bank account every day. So let's say $1,000, and no matter what, by the end of that day, if you didn't spend that money, it wouldn't carry over to tomorrow. So it's not like you'd have 1,000 one day, you wouldn't spend it, you'd have 2,000 the next day, you'd still have the same 1,000 the next day, but you've lost that option or that opportunity to use that $1,000 the day before. That same concept applies to time and the way that we choose to spend it. It doesn't come back to us. We can't compound it. We can't save it. We can only use it from day to day, and it's on a running clock. And that's something that lit a fire under my butt, because I started realizing that the amount of time we have is completely limited, but it's empowering at the same time. Don't worry, we are going to get to that, but that is why it is so important, and you can't multiply it, and you literally cannot stretch it no matter what you do. But this isn't to scare you at all. Originally, like I said, it did scare me. It got me kind of jacked up because I was like, oh shit, I've got so much to do and I've got only this amount of time. What am I doing? I need to be doing what I should be and what I want to be doing so that it aligns with my goals and my priorities. Basically, like I said, it's not meant to scare you. It shouldn't unnecessarily stress you out. And I totally empathize and I understand if something like time does. But all that I want to do is to get you thinking about the idea behind how you're spending your time and relating that to that money or that bank account concept, right? You've only got a limited amount every single day. And no matter what you do, if you haven't spent it well, or if you haven't spent it at all in a way that is something that is or in a way that it's getting you to something you want, or the something that you should, or let me rephrase that. That was a bit of a word jumble. The way that you spend your time should be doing what you should be doing to get to your goals or priorities, or what you want to be doing to get to your goals and priorities and to have those set. So looking at all these scary aspects of time and thinking it just goes from 1 to 0, how the hell can you keep track of it? How can you make sure that you're taking the steps in order to spend that time the way that you should be doing, or the way that you want to be doing? And a simple thing that I do and that I've been doing for a while now is creating a log. And it's almost like a report as to what you're doing day to day and how you're spending your time and all the specific things that you end up doing during that day, or at least keeping a task list. Some people might do that, but it gives you a really good idea, even if it's just a rough idea, of where your time's being spent. And you would be so surprised, and I was blown away by the amount of things that I would personally spend time doing that weren't things that I needed to be doing. It's sometimes the things you want to be doing, and that's totally cool. If there's something that you want to do, in my opinion, it's not a wasted amount of time. But again, that's another thing we can talk about. But creating that log, or creating that routine or task list that you have, it's really eye-opening. And whether that's on things relating to your goals, your vision, or overall enjoyment in life, it really starts to matter when you start looking at how you're spending that time. And it really gives you a perspective into what you need to be doing and how you can change things, and to think about time a little bit differently. Because the first time that I started thinking about time, it really threw me off. Like I said, it was, kind of disheartening or scary. It kind of gets you jacked up or stressed, and, not always the best way to kind of think like, oh, I've really got to get going. I've got things to do. I have all these goals and aspirations and things I want to achieve, but I need to get going. And it's something that is such a hidden asset that we don't always pay attention to, and we don't realize that at the time what we're doing in these moments or in the short term really matters long term, because you're never going to get this time back. And I don't know how many times, I'm sure all of you have heard the idea behind, an elderly individual who has all these regrets and all these things they wish they had done, and all this time that they had spent maybe, doing the wrong thing or wishing that they had more time. That's legit. That should fire you up. I know Gary Vaynerchuk, well, one person specifically, he speaks about that, and the idea behind regret, and seeing that in anybody, not necessarily someone who is elderly. It could be any person who spent their time doing something they really regret doing, or they regret spending or not spending the time doing something that they wanted to or should have done or could have done. And it's just something that you have to get used to, and you have to reframe your mind to it, of course, right? You have to, get excited about the idea that you have time and all these things that you're moving forward to, because you can always make more money. You can always have more things. You can always acquire more physical or monetary valued assets, but you're never going to get more time. We only have so much as an individual. And until we figure out time travel, or, someone's got some crazy way of going back in time, kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the scene in Napoleon Dynamite when Uncle Vito, I think his name's Uncle Vito, or whatever his name is, Uncle Vito, he gets that time travel tool that he straps between his legs and puts those like energon crystals into the shaft with Kip, and it just fries his thighs. I don't think that's going to happen in the near future, in the near future, in the long term. It's just not on the table, but you never know. They're going to be sending people to Mars. So who friggin' knows? Could be around the corner. But either way, still applies to, or still doesn't apply to right now. Right now, the time is now. And to speak again about, time travel, not having more time, sometimes like I said, it freaked me out, and I had almost these little mini existential crises at times. So, it would just kind of, freak me out that I'm a living, breathing, existing person, and I've only got so much time here, and I want to spend it wisely, right? It's just something that's important to me, and I'd hope it'd be important to you if you're, listening to this and something really speaks to you with what I'm talking about. But to speak on a lighter note, there's really a shit ton of time. We've got quite a bit that we can spend, and if we spend it the way that we should be, or the way that we want to be doing it, then we're already in a good place, right? At times we can think, oh, we've got such a limited amount of time, we've got to make the most of it. But it's only because you want to ensure that you spend it wisely and on the things you want and should be doing. And at the end of the day, it's just something that not that you should do it. I'm not telling you, hey, you need to create a log and you need to be accountable. I'm just offering you an invitation, or an idea, or a new frame of mind that might give you some insight into something that stresses you out, or something that you've maybe not thought about in any sense. And it just gets the gears turning, gets the wheels spinning, and maybe just lights a fire underneath you that pushes you to reach a little higher, maybe step a little farther out of your comfort zone, and gets you to really think that we've got stuff to do, right? There's a lot of things that, I know that you want to work on, and that I want to work on, that do take time. And when we spend that time in the wrong way or down the wrong road, you're not going to get it back, right? And it's become clear to me that how much time there is, it really only goes in a straight line, and you really have to have your priorities or your goals set. And that's really going to make a big difference in who you want to be and how you're going to get there and what steps you need to take, because they all revolve around the amount of time we have. And I'm not saying that you should be doing something specifically or whatever. I'm just saying that even if there's things that you want to do that aren't necessarily, quote unquote, the hustle or the building blocks of, steps to being your best self, whatever, as long as you're doing something that you want to do or that you've enjoyed, it's not a wasted amount of time. However, the idea behind spending that time, doing things that we might want to, that doesn't always align with like our goals and priorities, that just might mean that you might have to deal with the realities, whether they're in the short term or in the long term, that reflect the way that you spent that time. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, but you just have to be confident, and you have to take that head on and take responsibility for how you spent that time. So there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Enjoy your life. But why does it matter that we have our goals and priorities set, and how do they relate to time? Well, it's extremely important, because if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to end up in a random place with a random group of people and a random life that just happens. And you don't want a life that just happens. You want to be intentional, and you want to have purpose behind what you're doing and what drives you to move forward. Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants. You don't just want to end up in some random spot where you look back and say, well, what the fuck? What got me here? And I don't really like what I'm doing, or I don't like who I'm spending my time with. Because the reason for that is you weren't in the driver's seat. You weren't making the decisions. You weren't taking the steps that you should have been taking or wanted to take that aligned with a deeply anchored goal or a priority that you've set. And I think for a lot, like, you've got to look at goal setting and priority setting as a bit dry and boring, and sometimes it's not interesting at all. You don't want to sit down and, just spend a shit ton of time writing and reassessing where your life is at and what you're doing with your time. But that's something that's a little dry and boring that sets you up for some huge steps and some empowering movements in your life. And I totally get why people don't want to do it, but it's something that's extremely essential. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of how we want to set goals and what types of priorities we want to set in this episode, but that will absolutely be something coming up in the next little while, because I think that'd be extremely valuable to you, because that's it's kind of a square one move. Like that's something that's really going to set you apart from just ending up in a random place to ending up exactly where you intended to be in your life. And I think sometimes the reason that people might find it boring or not interesting to set goals is probably because they're not being truthful enough, and you're not clearly defining why you're setting those goals and priorities. So this might be because you've got these ideals, or you've got these situations in your life where you think that you want something, or you think that you want your life to be this way, or you want these things, or you want this type of outcome, but that might be influenced by other things or people or life situations that doesn't really get down to that deep core value, or that core anchor to what you want. And again, another topic, but that's an important thing as well too, right? Being truthful and being honest with not only others, but with yourself as well too, when you're having that inner monologue, or that option, or that opportunity to write down, or to journal, or to, start that log, or that path to understanding your goals and priorities. And it's extremely important to do this, not only because we have, again, like that limited amount of time to spend, and it's only going in that linear way, right? It's going from 1 to 0. It's not going left, right, up, down, multiplying, or it's only subtracting. And it's extremely important because the relationship with your goals and your priorities is so tightly knitted with the amount of time that you have. Because no matter what, if you don't have time to take those steps to get to where you need to be, or to have those goals or priorities knocked off, you've lost. You kind of missed the train, unfortunately. And it's just so important, and we wouldn't be in the right direction if we didn't know where we're going and spending that time the way that we should be doing. And there's a dilemma of wasting your time when you've defined your goals and priorities. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean don't know what you want to do and then do something else that's not going to get you there. Because if that's what you're doing and that's your prerogative, go ahead, do it. That's fine. If you want to enjoy your life, but put your goals and priorities to the sides because you've got some other idea of what you want in the short term, totally do that. But again, you might just end up being that person that ends up with a random life and a random outcome that you're kind of questioning at the end of the day, and you get stuck, being that quote unquote elderly person that regrets a shit ton of stuff. And that's not what you want to be doing, because at the end of the day, that's really kind of a worst case scenario, but it does happen. But the important thing to do is to look at the way that you're spending your time. And once you've sat down and you understand where you want to go and the goals and priorities that you have, it becomes important to begin to execute. And that means going forward with a plan of action or a well-defined outline. Obviously, it can be brief, or it can be kind of rough, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be specific. It does have to be specific, but it doesn't have to be completely in a box all the time. You can't stray afar. You can't go out of it. You have to go from A to B. There's no other way around it. You're always going to be going in so many different directions when you get towards stepping into that light of your goals and your priorities. And that's just a fact of life. You need to be resilient towards that. But it becomes a daunting task when you start thinking, holy shit, I've got to really start to execute and I've got to move forward on these things that I want for my life, because otherwise I'm going to regret it. And that should empower you. It shouldn't scare you. And I don't want you to be worried about leaving this episode and, wanting to have a freaked out state of mind where you just don't do anything and you get stuck in analysis paralysis where you're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? I've only got so much time. But you're spending the time spinning your wheels. An actionable step is making that time log. And again, like I said, if you want to just make something that's brief, if you want to make it rough, just take a day, even if you do it in your phone, open up the notes, write down some of the things that you find yourself doing throughout the day. If you can put a number to that, absolutely really good. But if you don't, even just having a list of things that you're doing within a 24-hour period can give you an idea into how you're spending your time. And maybe you can use this new understanding of how time and your goals and priorities relate together to make some really dope forward moves, maybe some lateral moves that even align you closer to your goals and priorities, but just really taking action on the time that you have and the limited amount that you do have, but being empowered by that concept and that idea that you're responsible for it. You're the one who makes those choices. You're the one who creates those actionable steps. And you can literally do anything that you want. It doesn't matter. Whatever that goal or priority is for you, and if it sticks to you and your deep core values and you're truthful and you're intentional about what you want and you're honest to yourself, then all you need to do is to start auditing your time consciously and ensuring you're spending your time responsibly for whatever it is you desire. I really hope that you enjoyed that. It takes me a few tries to end up getting these off the hot audio press. But at the end of the day, this is episode number 2. There's always going to be things that I'm going to have to work out, but I really am truly grateful that you've spent this time with me. And if you have anything that you want to talk about, or if there's anything that you might be a little confused about, or if I just confused the hell out of you for the last 20, 25 minutes, I'm sorry. Come talk to me. Let's figure out what it is that I should be talking about to you about and how I can make you a better person and how we as a team can uphold, educate, execute, and exceed. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.